2 weeks ago, 29 castaways left the island of Taransay having spent a year in isolation. Now, the project's psychologist gives her view of the good, the bad, and the ugly of Castaway 2000.
In many ways, I'm sitting here at an advantage because the project couldn't fail as far as I was concerned. As soon as you put these people on the island and gave them choices about how they were going to live their lives, it became a success because there was something to be learned from this. We learned how decision-making can be very difficult with a large group because they will discuss ad nauseum until people said, I'm not going to meetings anymore.
So I really think you were rude to me.
I just thought we'd agreed certain things, and I felt that they weren't gradually slipping.
We discovered that inequality can be maintained even given a choice and given, in fact, I suppose a philosophy that they were going to have an equal society, that it's very difficult to shuffle that off. We also know a bit more about isolation, about how people leave if they don't perhaps have social support that maybe sometimes we take for granted. And I suppose we've learnt about reality television as well. The idea is to get a kind of normal distribution of the characteristics of a population.
Cynthia McVeigh has been involved with the castaways since the summer of 1999, when she first met and helped to select them. She also attempted to prepare them for island life.
You may suffer from isolation. Now, you may think you're going to join a community, and you are, but people can be very lonely in a crowd. People can be very isolated in a crowd. You're going to have to develop a very strong sense of tolerance about each other.
You've had 16 minutes. I can't see much steam yet. We should be steaming by now. OK, keep it going. Well done. 3 more barrels.
Helping Cynthia to get the right mix of people was ex-SAS survival expert Lofty Wiseman, who in just 2 days had to predict the future. So how did his initial character assessments compare with life on the island?
There's real intolerant. Oh, and he started, and straight away, friction. If you put yourself on a pedestal and you don't accept people for what they are, you're never going to get on. So I think he had a lot to learn there, you know. And with Des, I wouldn't like to be with him, quite honestly, you know.
If he hadn't been here, we wouldn't have done half of the things that we've done.
The fog is coming in, we've got to get there in 3 minutes, you know, we're not going to make it.
The doctor, he didn't participate. He sort of come and went as though he's pre-selected himself, you know what I mean, and a little bit arrogant, I think, you know.
We don't want to be there until it is leak-proof, warm.
Julie, she plays up the camera a bit, but I think you need that as well. But deep down, like, she's doing it, you know. I love her accent.
You wait till we drink right all over you.
Yeah, she's very willing. I think if she went into a sulk, it'd be a deep one.
Here we have the bathtub, absolutely vital, and the loo. Facilities particularly recommended by Her Majesty's prisons.
Mind your makeup, Gordon, come on! Gordon, a strong, hard-working lad, like, the sense of humour got him through. And he has got a lot of knowledge, and he's used to roughing it. So I think he knows what to look out for on the island. I don't think he's going in with his eyes shut.
I do not feel part of this community at all.
Well done, Gwen. They're a good partner, him and Gwyneth. They got a lot of tolerance. They would possibly be the stability, you know, where other people, like the younger ones maybe, you know, where they're going to go to for advice, like, you know, something firm to lean on. Be a good crutch in a crisis.
I think I'm getting feelings like we can say what we want to Ron, and Ron is... But
he accepts it.
Yeah, but other people can't.
Yes. Why doesn't Ray? Will 2 people come off with me to stop?
Ben was there and he was supporting the team, so he's a good support player. I think when he feels his feet and he's into it, he'd be a real influential member, you know.
How's your leadership skills?
I've got to go. I'm being told to move on. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, Ron, yeah. Sunglasses, poser. I didn't see a lot of him, quite honestly.
I'm really enjoying myself.
Great.
And I'm thinking what they do, you know.
Let them plant potatoes that are that big to get ones that big. I rest my case. You can go to Sainsbury's, you buy a bag that big the size you want them.
Ponytail, straight away he took over. He was trying things and no one was sort of stood against him saying, hang on, Ray, let's do it this way, So he's getting his own way because he was a big guy and he appeared to know what he's saying.
I am what I am, what I am.
We are all what we are, but we have adjusted our behaviour slightly.
I will not adjust to journalists.
Cynthia has been following the progress of the Castaways and has visited them throughout the year. She knows all about the highs and lows of life on Taransay.
In any situation where you've got people operating together, you have good things. You see the best of people. You see people being kind and people being supportive and people trying to negotiate. You also see the bad things. You see the moments when people are not being charitable, perhaps when there are jealousies, perhaps when people bring their stereotypical viewpoints with them and find them very difficult to dispose of. And you also get the ugly moments, the moments when the raw side of humanity is shown.
Ray! I will not sit down! Ray, stop it! Now!
It's part and parcel of who we are as people. It's part and parcel of the way we are when we act in groups together. And I suppose it's part of the story of Castaway 2000.
The Taransay Dictionary is a real eye-opener. Community. A body of people having something in common.
Community. A group of unstable people thrown together on an island.
On first arrival, the group were elated at the prospect of the year together. But delays in the accommodation being ready meant that there was an early split in the community as the families stayed off the island until it was complete. Differing priorities and expectations caused some friction.
The ones who were on the island, and actually some of them would probably go back, and some of them said to me, Cynthia, it was the best time we ever had, when we were all sleeping, cheek by jowl in the schoolhouse which was leaking. I think they felt that some of those who were off the island didn't really appreciate how much hard work they were putting into it. I think that they felt that those off the island were dwelling too much on bits of paper and contracts and not enough on getting down to business and getting things done.
A delegation from Taransay visited those off the island to keep them in touch with what was going on.
Yeah, but we volunteered under certain terms, which were that we had accommodation and our terms were that we were clothed adequately for the Western Isles.
The group who were on Harris in the hotels, they seemed to be having the life of Riley. They were castaway in name, but not castaway in nature. And they would see the other group as perhaps putting up with what shouldn't be put up with.
Can't have everything in a bed of roses. I mean, if everything was a bed of roses, when they got back, they wouldn't have achieved anything. They've got to rough it a bit.
Are you, the community there, managing the project, i.e. the building and what gets done first, so that the rest of the community can join you? Or is it just happening to their whim?
We've had meetings as such each evening about what we think are the priorities for the following day, i.e. is it a priority to build the sauna, or is it a priority to fill in trenches that are a hazard? And I think that you can trust us that we're making the right ones. The sauna, of course.
At the end of January, those off the island were finally able to join the rest of the group.
There's about half a dozen of us really roughed it, from day one. Who's not been over on the mainland in the helicopter, having pub lunches in this. And that's why they're a little, they want pampering a little bit. To get them used to the roughing.
It was decision time for the now united community as they started to address some of the serious issues of communal life, like where to live.
I like this room. I like that one in there. I think it's gorgeous.
The view's tempting, Tanya. It really is.
Yeah. But you can't have it because I want it.
But I'm having it.
But I want it.
Fight.
Fight you.
Well, this one or the other one. I would love.
Yeah, well, it's all democratic.
They were suspicious that somebody might be wanting to become the leader of the group, and there's resentment against that, and they would start arguing about that, and they immediately would want to pull down the person who might think that he or she might lead the group.
Do you understand that does not make you right?
No, not.
Unfortunately, Peter, this is meant to be a democracy, not a dictatorship.
It's not a dictatorship.
I'm not the leader.
It's not. I don't want to be a leader. I wouldn't lead this show.
Well, then stop going like that then. You're in the wrong place because you keep acting like you are the bloody leader.
Control. The power of directing or command.
Control. See? Megalomania.
Leadership became very skill-based. It broke down into separate groups. For example, you would get Peter leading the horticultural group with a great deal of expertise there.
This Macchia ground is famous for its fertility. It seems very light to stuff that I'm used to, and I'm sure it's a bit acidic, although they assure me, the locals, that you can grow very good cabbages and stuff. So, yeah, I'm hoping it'll be all right.
Right, I'm going to leave you to do this one all on your own.
All right.
Colin dealt with the slaughterhouse and the butchery, the animals from that point of view.
I've learned a lot here since I've been here as regards the butchery trade again. Slaughtering. It's made a good boss's cob.
And you got Des, who organised the fencing and was really influential in the turfing of the pods. So clearly you got leaders within certain working parties, but you didn't get this overall leader that you might have expected. One of the things that has become an issue in the island, I think, is the it's not fair. You know, it's not fair, I'm walking off from the meeting, which I think we've all seen.
I'm really upset and disappointed by this.
Because of that, fairness is something that would be prized. And Patrick came out very strongly as somebody who was absolutely fair, would give a non-judgmental opinion on any issue where there was a debate.
If Ron says something against Ben, bollocks to Ron, I'm sorry, but mine with Ben.
Gwyneth,
has happened.
I think I'm getting feelings like we can say what we want to Ron, and Ron is... But
He accepts it.
yeah, but other people can't.
Yes.
That's what we're getting.
Patrick emerged as a kind of father figure, somebody who had a fair sense of justice and whom they respected, and is a very good person to go to with a problem or to settle a debate. But he's not the type of leader that you would want if you had warring factions coming over the hills and you needed somebody to stand at the front and marshal the troops.
So are we just going to do it that everyone who wants to be involved in the animals puts their hand up, we make the list, and then we get together as a group?
As opposed to an elected leader, they organised themselves into subgroups and committees, choosing the area they wanted to work in. However, it was decided some jobs had to be shared equally, which didn't please everyone.
Group and say, look, these were our, not targets, that's too big, but this is what we've achieved and this is what we hope to achieve.
You get resistance also to what the group expects of you. Until you're a proper member of the group and you're working cohesively and cooperatively, what happens is you resent the fact that this group is telling you that you will do kitchen duty or that you will go out and dig turf even though it's pouring with rain and you can barely stand up. So you resent the group pressures.
We had a team of 4 of us, me, Hilary, Sheila and Ray, and then Ray announced yesterday that he wasn't going to do it and Cassie was going to do it instead. There's quite a lot of feeling that everybody should have an equal equal share of the kitchen rota, because it's quite an onerous one. It goes on for 12 hours, lots and lots of washing up. And I just felt, well, I just don't think it's fair.
You won't get me arguing or fighting and all this lot. I'm just going to let them get on with it.
Well, a stereotype is, of course, that the men are dominant and the men push the women into positions doing work that is undervalued. You see, the problem with food work, for example, kitchen work is, well, any old person can peel a potato, you know. If I'm really pushed, I can open a tin of beans. So somehow it becomes undervalued, and the nature of women's work has been that it has been less valued than men's work in the past. It may be that the men in the island felt that they were going to do the big important work. You know, they were going to put in the wind power system and they were going to do the hydro system, etc. And the women, well, they could just do women's work and be in the kitchen because it wasn't really that important. That created a huge amount of resentment, and I think it took a lot of negotiating for some of the men to realise that this was going to be a gender equal society and that they would be taking their turn in the kitchen and that the women would be out doing things they wanted to do.
You're tending to get the same people now doing the cooking, and we've got to make sure that they don't get into their minds that they'll be doing it all year, because otherwise people will just take the piss, and we're not having that.
If one of the women in the kitchen would have asked me to do it, I would have said, but I'm sick of him trying to run the show and running about like a blue-ass fly all the time. For me to spend my time in the kitchen and other people to be walking about all day, it's just not on.
1, 2, 3.
It was clear to me from the outset that the women who were going in this project were not women who wanted to sit knitting in the corner or cooking in the kitchen. They wanted to get out there and learn how wind power systems worked, or turf pods or whatever. And some of them, especially the young women, found some of the men a bit dominant. And I think they felt that they were going to be pushed into subordinate positions and made to perhaps take roles that they didn't want to take.
A woman's pole, and a woman for once in her life makes a great erection.
Good. They're going to do another one, are they? Carry on for the rest of the day. We'll just make some cement. See how long it lasts.
What's that?
The caring roles in many ways seem to have been taken up by the women. The school, although Roger has a great part in the school and the children all have music lessons, the school has predominantly women as its central force. Another area of stereotyping is actually, food ordering and food supply. And although kitchen duty is gender equal, the supporting role of the kitchen is mainly females. Is it a case that the women are used to these roles in society and so they slip into them almost without noticing? Or is it the case that they slip into these roles because in their heart of hearts, and it's not just bred in the bone, it's actually innate, it's part of the nature of women. Given that they go outside and they do a lot of other things, I think what it has shown is that they are multi-talented.
It wasn't just who was doing what, but the standards of work and work rates that were causing disagreements.
We're digging big holes, as usual.
Playing out.
That's what we do on this island. Just dig holes.
Dig. Yeah. We'll be going through shortly.
We don't really know what for. We just get Ray and Peter to come up and say, let's dig a big hole.
Just smile and wave.
Peter and Ray watching us from a distance, shouting. It's like two...
Granddad.
It's like, you know in the Muppet Show? There's the two grandpas
in the
balcony.
Marley and Marley.
We're Marley and Marley.
We gave Ben, Trevor and Toby a job to do down there. And we told them we're putting pig fencing in. And we just spotted it.
We dug out the holes for it.
We just spotted it. And I just said to Peter, we're not having giraffes, are we?
All that's basically happened is that, as usual, we get the bad end of the job. So Ray and Pete start it. God love them. Right?
They dig all the holes with a really fun machine. They go
with that noise as well, it does. And then from there, we're asked to dig them deeper, wider, put the poles in and concrete them, which we've done.
Which is fine.
But as Ray's just come over and informed us that the poles needed to be cut in half. But what the problem is that if we would have cut the poles like 3 or 4 times, he would have moaned that they weren't cut right. But nobody told us that they were meant to be cut anyway.
When Brains come out, he must have missed that lot.
Ray thinks we've built a giraffe pen now.
Because it's to keep what in on out pigs?
Is it pigs we're getting tomorrow or giraffes, They've got to do a full... I don't think none of them's capable of doing a full day's work. Convincing now. They'll do about an hour and then they're off gallivant.
Obviously, when people came to the island, they were unable to bring with them the status that they had before. And Ray was used to being the boss, very much the gaffer, used to telling young people what to do and used to being obeyed. He was also used to getting some respect for what he had done in terms of work. And of course, when he got to the island, he had to re-earn this, and this presented some problems.
Look, I told you earlier. I do what Some of them think it's bucklings, I'm sure they do. They talk a good show. You know what I mean? But when it comes, there's about 4 or 5 gaffing, and the rest are playing.
In everyday life, I think hierarchy and status means an awful lot to us. And I think that we know our place in society. And knowing your place in society means that you know what's expected of you and you also have expectations of others. It's not necessarily a healthy thing because it indicates something of a fear of freedom. And that's the fear of freedom to be yourself.
Ray's frustrations and anger came to a head on Burns night.
They could do a job, but they won't do.
The shouting doesn't help.
Staying in bed till 3 o'clock. And don't tell me you're lazy.
The Sunday, Ray. It's none of your business.
Oh, yeah. You're a lazy.
Hey, Ray, what's going on?
No, I'm f***ing sick of these f***ing earthlings you've got here. And we're sick of you, you fat snoring.
Hey!
Sit down!
I will not
Sit down! Ray,
Stop it! Now!
In March, Ray dramatically left the island and sold his story to a newspaper.
I'd like to say it's a shame. Well, I suppose it is in some ways, but I'd like to say I'd miss him. I would miss him. And I won't. Sorry, Ray. You're not all bad, but you're not all good either.
Ray, who left the island, has sold his story to some newspaper concerning Porrick and Philly. I feel really bad about that, because I worked with Ray a bit while he was over here, little bits of projects. I think anybody who's lived in this community, to actually leave and then sell a little snippet of something, you know, I find it quite distasteful, really.
Yeah, there's one thing telling his story, there's another thing telling other people's.
Yeah.
There was a very keen sense of betrayal, having been betrayed by those that they liked and had lived with and in some cases had confided in, and also a sense that they were to some extent sitting ducks.
Oh, they hate us, but he shouldn't have done what he did. Anyway, it's a bit of a laugh. Hopefully he'll have a few drinks on us.
Ash?
You're right.
Yeah.
Have a look.
I think it's quite sinister to say it's Ray, really.
But it's got the ponytail, it's got that bottom jaw, it's got the glint in his eyes.
That is,
So
I
we'll
love
burn him at the stake.
the beer cans for the eyes.
I do, very appropriate.
What do you reckon?
Now all he needs is a copy of the mirror.
Others also left due to problems integrating with the rest of the group. The Careys' different lifestyle demanded by their religious practices and beliefs meant that they found it difficult to fit in.
Feeling another man's bottom and having sex with another man is dirty. It says so in the Bible.
So what? If I called her something racist about her colour, you know, she'd be the first to call me a racist. But they can say whatever they like. They can say that their Bible says that my way of living isn't as good as theirs. I'm not as good as them. And they can get away with it.
I would think that in today's culture that we live in, that it's becoming intolerable to be prejudiced of any type. You know, because we live in such a multicultural country. You've got to be tolerant.
Tolerate, T-O-L-E-R-A-T-E. That page, isn't it?
No. What do you think? Have a look yourself. Can't find it. There's no tolerance in here.
There's no tolerance on Taransay.
There's no tolerance on Taransay.
When the community then felt that perhaps, or Ron felt it was an issue of homosexuality and homophobia here, and the community also felt that perhaps, and another issue, their dietary requirements meant they were eating more chickens than anybody else, or that they perhaps when Gordon wasn't working as hard as some people thought he might be working, they were afraid to address those issues because they thought they might be accused of being racist.
Do you think one of the reasons why everyone's taken so long to sort of say anything or hasn't said anything yes is for fear of sounding racist?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely worried about it. I mean, if this family ends up, say, giving their notice and leaving this island, how is that going to look?
Yeah.
That we're a bunch of superior white fascist pigs who drove them off the island because we couldn't tolerate their religion and couldn't tolerate their difference.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way. I mean, I want to be accepted by them as much as I feel that they want to be accepted by me.
The Careys were in a difficult position from the start, really, not because they were black, but because of their religious beliefs. Their religious beliefs meant that they isolated themselves from the community. They didn't have the support of their church on the island, and that made their life difficult. Their religious practices somehow became confused, I think, with their colour, and really that was an unfortunate combination.
I do not feel part of this community at all.
And she's saying to me, well, we should stay. But I'm saying, well, what is the point in staying? You know, when we're having so much pain and so much hurt, we are forever defending ourselves against one thing or the other. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sick of it. I am just sick of it.
I just feel it was an opportunity, the biggest opportunity ever here. So many different people, different walks of life, different religion, different beliefs, different colour. Why the hell couldn't we have made a go of it?
We do like to think of ourselves as being fair and giving everybody the same opportunity and not carrying around with us stereotypical views or bigoted ideas and not discriminating. But with the best will in the world, the discrimination operates somewhere along the line, even if it's inverted. And on Taransay, if you don't challenge Gordon because he's black, you're actually discriminating against those who are white on the island. And it's a strange thing to say, and it can be a very unpopular thing to say, but it's something that I think concerns some people in society.
Before the year began, the castaways agreed to manage with limited resources so that they could reflect on the important things in life.
I suppose the thing that surprised me the most was the fact that the castaways went with this romantic, idealised notion of living in a community, working together and doing without, and that it was very quickly obvious that they moved to the extreme of luxury rather than the extreme of survival.
Having signed up to live without visitors, electronic items or parcels, the increased arrival of personal packages on the fortnightly supply boat was hotly debated.
Thanks. And as you can see, they're all regulation size as well. Quite slim. Look at the edge of that. Very thin, that. So.
Now you've built a fantastic community here with your livestock and everything else. This is exactly the parcels in particular, the extra things are exactly the things that people suspect that you have and that people feel that make a mockery of the project. And it's entirely up to you how you want to go about this, but I do think that many of you, your original philosophy wasn't at all related to having all of these things. It was disappointing because I like to think that if I was on an island given this opportunity, I would live by the rules. And I know that some of them, for example, Ben has tried desperately to live by the rules, and Liz and Des have tried to live by the rules. Lots of them have tried to live by the rules.
We're not going to have any parcels to any visitors that come here. We're going to be pleasant to them and we're going to be nice, but we're not going to drink anything with them.
Drink alcohol.
We're not going to smoke with them.
Discourage them.
We're not having any contraband.
So if I can go to, or you can come to me and say you're backsliding, I can come to you and say, remember that conversation?
Yeah,
You know, without any acrimony.
Yeah. That's the whole point of acting together, isn't it?
That's the reason, so that there's more than one of us.
But it's disappointing that we can't easily shuffle off the have that we have. I mean, to have or to be. They had a choice over there. They could just be or they could have, and they really went quite a long way down the have road.
With a community budget and just £5 a week personal spending money, the castaways were forced to look at values and equality.
I assumed that they would have this equal society. They would all have a fair amount of money, an equal amount of money to spend, whether that was in their whole budget with a little left over for their own personal consumption. What happened on the island really was that those who had a little more money were well able to go and spend that by getting some wayward fishermen to collect some bootlegged goods for them. And there was a great acceptance of that, but it meant that the inequality that exists in our society as we live it here in capitalist commercial society also transferred itself to Taransay with some acceptance.
Contraband everywhere. Contraband heaven. It's Taransay, you know? Island of pirates.
Benson and Hedges, Smirnoff, lovely, lovely cocktails on the terrace. Oh, I got my little backs of baccy, look. Oh, lovely, lovely. And it feels better because you shouldn't do it.
The inequality is embedded in our society. Somebody's always going to have a bigger house, a yacht, a bigger car, a boat house. All of these things are things that we find very difficult to shuffle off. And I think that was clarified by seeing what happened on Taransay.
As well as the wider community issues, the personalities involved in the project have played a crucial role. What's Cynthia's view on the impact some of the individuals have had on the project, and the impact it's had on them.
Peter, I think, came into this project with a lot of experience in which everybody knew he had. His skills were valued and his expertise was valued in that area. But when he made a suggestion about how something should be done, or when he complained about something, people assumed that he was trying to be dominant and trying to put his stamp on the community.
I think that in the beginning of a community, because I've lived in one for 25 years, if you don't establish the rules and stick to them, other conventions begin to develop, and it's a very dangerous precedent.
I think Peter really did want the project to work, and he really did feel very strongly that they had all the materials that they needed to make this an outstanding year in terms of discussing issues that people might feel uncomfortable about, that would need to be raised in a community, like who's doing enough work and people not committing themselves enough to some project.
What is all this anxiety about at the end of the day?
It's not anxiety.
Well, it seems like anxiety to me when people are crying and getting upset and feeling depressed and talking about leaving.
Well, we had an agreement. We made a clear agreement that there would be a certain degree of commitment.
There were people on the island who felt that perhaps things should be negotiated more, and that it was suitable to sit and talk and discuss things in a quiet way. But there were others, alternatively, like Peter, for example, who felt that activity is born from confrontation and that you need some get up and go and some conflict in order to, I suppose, promote people into action.
Some people say they don't work because other people don't work, and then the people that do get work get accused of making other people feel guilty because they do it. It's like a madhouse.
I'm just trying to try and understand why a lot of people a lot of very different people have a problem with your personality.
I think there's an anti-intellectualism around in this culture of ours. I am never allowed to discuss abstract ideas. I'm never allowed to discuss anything philosophical because of the fear of triggering people's insecurities.
You might be intellectually on another plane, but give people like me a chance to think, and Gwyneth. You're not. We're trying to say things and you keep butting in.
Peter feels that people perceive him in a particular way, and he has a heart too, as he told me, and I thought he was going to cry.
Just because I'm male and I'm big and I'm old, as I said earlier, I am equally sensitive, equally. People don't seem to realise this.
I have seen him very, very distressed, and he was very distressed about the arguments he had with Gwyneth.
But he's not a bastard, he's a lovely man, and he's ever so shaken by this.
Thanks for your support.
It's all right.
Just very quickly tell me what happened.
I got some coffee thrown over me, that's all I want to say.
People deal with conflict in different ways, and I do think that in some cases it's quite useful to get the argument out into the open and to say what you feel and not to try and sweep it under the carpet. But sometimes, if that's done, things are said in the heat of the moment that you can't take back, and things progress into almost a violence. I think that we saw this on some occasions on the island when there were threats of physical violence.
Funny me, if there wasn't women and children in this room, I'd throw this plate at you. Yes, I would.
Really useful contribution, Ron, as usual.
I've learned that one has to change one's tone, perhaps. Be quieter, be more measured, be more withdrawn, be more quiet. Maybe consult, perhaps, before sounding off. I don't know. But I don't regret. I mean, that's one of the weird things. I regret perhaps some of the fact that it seemed that I was too serious, but I was serious about this project. I regret perhaps sort of questions of tone, but I'll say it now. I do not regret what I said.
I think if you go through the year, you'll find that people have perhaps been different than what you might have expected. I think Des is maybe a case in point here, because Des was clearly very anxious to get the job done. When he was involved in the orienteering task, he was quite uptight and quite stressed, and he really wanted to go on the project. He also got involved in a debacle over the fact that he had gone against a community decision. And at that time, I thought, well, he's very committed to this, and he's very hard working, and he maybe thinks he's going about it a far better way than the group. group, but given a group decision, he might not comply with that, and if you gave him a job to do, he might not do it.
But you have gone against the decision that the whole group made.
I've come back to revise the decision.
I asked you, were you happy to go ahead because you didn't agree with it, and you said yes.
Well, of course, Des is somebody, if you give a job to do, no matter how awful that job is, he will do it, he will finish it.
I've only got 250 of those to put in.
How many, Des?
250 of those we've got to put in.
And he's really been a cornerstone in many ways of the hard work on the island.
We've now got the fence, we've got the area rotivated, we've got, you know, the plants going, and it's just planting out now and hoping that we can grow the stuff.
If he hadn't been here, we wouldn't have done half of the things that we've done. And the same with Peter. They've come in for a lot of stick. But we couldn't have done it without them.
I think that Des may have learned through this that you can't always get people to do what you want, no matter how much you might grumble at them or complain or organise a meeting.
I learned very quickly and adapted myself to think, you know, it's pointless pushing people that don't want to be pushed, you know.
He has achieved a great deal. He has learned that he doesn't have to be out there digging, and that he can sit for 40 hours and make a backgammon board that looks as if it's been produced and professionally, and that he is able to sit quietly and concentrate on something so creative. But he is very, very patient and very good with the children, and I don't know whether he realised just how good he was in that respect, so I think he'll take a lot of that with him.
Tanya, I'll remember.
When Des had a wee nip at Liz, which she takes like water off a duck's back and is part of their relationship and she takes in fun, people got quite stroppy about this and quite upset about this and thought it was inappropriate because they didn't really understand the full nature of their relationship.
I've just spilled our dinner. I just went to pour the water off to drain the pasta, and I dropped it all over the floor. And the sheep poo that's over the new tent, and I've managed to rescue a few bits.
You pretending to be in a good mood, Boris, really being in a bad mood?
No, not really. No.
Look, I don't want sheep poop.
Liz,
Poo too?
Liz, you're not getting sheep poo? You're not getting sheep poo, all right?
One man not worried about roughing it was Mike Laird, or Action Man as he became known after some of his early exploits.
Bloody one me!
Woo! Nike Extreme, baby!
Mike's story might be the most productive thing to come out of this year. Mike started the year testing himself.
What are we going to use this part for?
Hopefully a roofing timber. The problem is we're having difficulty getting stuff that's wide enough to actually span the black house.
He tested himself in the slaughterhouse. He's tested himself all the way along the line, presenting challenges to himself. And he's also had time to think. He found that Toby and Trevor and Porrig all pair off, and he doesn't have the friendship with Porrig, and he doesn't have the friendship with Ben, and he can't knock on Trevor's door because he feels that he'll interfere with the romances. So he had time to sit and think about things. And then I think he realised that he was a much more touchy-feely emotional type than he had ever realised, and that was quite distressing for him, I think, to realise that, you know, he sort of got in touch with his female side, and that's really a genuine thing to do.
You do stranger things here, things that I would never do at home. Some of my friends would probably think it was quite odd for me to be involved in art and crafty things, rather than sitting there in the pub and drinking half a dozen pints with them. If they knew this is what I did in my spare time, they'd certainly see a different side of me.
I think that it's been an enormous period of personal growth for Mike, and it's given him the time and the space he maybe needed to look at the type of person he really is, and to realise that he doesn't have to go gung-ho up mountains or jumping off cliffs or whatever, that he's allowed to be a sensitive and an emotional person.
It's time for little bald Mike to become big old bald Mike and grow up a bit. So I'm happy. I mean, this is what I've realised, and I should be content with me, who I am, and my life, and just go for it when I get off here. See what happens.
Could we trade?
Yeah, no problem.
Ron Copsey was someone who was keen to challenge many aspects of the project and the people involved in it.
Well, I don't have that huge mistrust of people, Tam, and I'm really glad I don't have it.
What you do with Lion?
Yeah, I do with Lion, because I have cause.
But I don't have that mistrust with people, but we're in a situation where you've got to be careful.
Ron, just because somebody talks back to you, don't walk off.
I think Ron started out the year maybe in some ways on the face of it confidently. You know, he was Mr. Funny and he was Mr. Entertainment, and that was his role. He also felt that he perhaps had some power over people, and that he would be able to wheedle his way around them, because he may always have done that in the past.
I'm not saying I'm going to share it with all of them, because some of them are all miserable kids. And I wouldn't share a bleeding doner kebab with some of them, let alone my contraband.
He found himself, you know, flying often in the face of the ethos that people wanted to create there, and the rules that people wanted to adhere to there.
I don't care who is on or who is off according to the rules. I have no personal beef against Ron whatsoever. I just think that in the case of these... We can call me a liar. In the case of these rules, I think that you have, as I understood them at Windermere, I think you've blown them.
They're stupid rules. I will not abide by them.
So it was maybe disappointing for Ron to find that there were those there who weren't prepared to accept that Ron could play that kind of role and get away with it. But the other side of Ron was that he enjoyed mixing it, and he admitted to me that he enjoyed mixing it. He saw this as entertainment. He saw it as lively, to have a wee pick at somebody and see how they reacted.
I tell you what, that cock should have the biggest smile of it on its face.
Well, if it's heterosexual.
How dare you assume?
How dare you assume to someone's sexuality?
Not even animals are heterosexual.
Sexuality is fluid.
Shut up.
You shut up.
When there are people there who are fragile, and people there who are sensitive, and people who have time to be introspective in a way they maybe never had at home, find that very difficult to tolerate.
What was that one hand, then?
I'm surprised.
Just on one thing. One-handed.
One chamber thing.
Sorry?
I missed it.
I said an old tosser like you was bound to be good at it.
So a wee tiny remark that said at a party in Glasgow or London wouldn't bother you, you wouldn't think about it the next day, can grow into this enormous insult on the island.
I was intimidated and repressed by it. I always felt that I couldn't really be free and enjoy, because there was always the chance there that it would be ridiculed, or in some way that the joy would be detracted.
Part of that happened with Ron. He would make a wee teeny remark. He would know it would be a remark that would just wind somebody up a bit, but it would become enormous and a big issue, and that isolated him.
You know, I came here, Ron was my best friend. I would have done anything for that man. And now some days he frightens me.
I think when it comes to departure, isolation and lack of social support features. When it came to Ron, I think he became isolated to some extent. He didn't have the social support of like-minded people, and he did say to me that he missed his gay friends and he missed the camaraderie that they had. So isolation featured there, and then of course his dog died, and his dog was his last social comfort in many ways, although he did have friends there who possibly will be lifelong friends.
By the time Ron left the project halfway through the year, Ben was one of the castaways who'd become most affected by him.
Over the last few weeks, Ron, there's been so many little Ben rumours going around, yeah? And there's as small as Gwyneth doing Ben's washing, or as small as Ben using the phone. Teeny things, yeah, which, yeah, you should normally be able to laugh about. But it's sort of like the Chinese water torture, where it drips and every day and then suddenly another one comes back. To tell you the truth, that all of those little rumours and those little things, they always seemed to work their way back to you.
Ben, he has found the year quite different in many ways, because he has really been an innocent abroad, and he's been the butt of the humour of many of them on many occasions, and his innocence has been really a pleasure to see.
I'm being hoodwinked because I've admitted that when I'm drunk, I'm very susceptible to any sort of decisions or ideas.
Anybody want to go to the bathroom? Come on,
yes.
I will walk 5,000 miles.
So, This is why when you're all suddenly throwing at me, go on Ben, shave all your hair off.
Yeah, all of
I'm
us.
very
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable?
Are we throwing?
That's not fair.
He also, I believe, thinks the best of everybody and tries to think the best of everybody. And it's a hard lesson to learn that not everybody is going to be as well disposed to you as you are to them, and not everybody is going to try and think the best of people.
Peter put it down to psychological bullying. And I've never experienced it before, so that's perhaps why I was so weak in coping with it. But when you're stuck on an isolated island and there's only the 36 of you, it does, it is more affecting, because you've got no one else to talk to. And it's there constantly in your face, happening every day.
If you've got anything to say it to my face in front of everyone, all right? No, I won't calm it, all right?
You never said to me, do I want to come and hear what you've said about me that was so bad that they wanted me off this island?
I'm so shocked that just happened. I'm so shocked.
There's not a witch hunt out for you, so you don't
No, I'm going actually. Inca?
I think he's learned a lot. He's learned how to laugh at himself, but I think he probably always was a bit good at that,
I like the clip-on tie, which Patrick had to help me with.
I think that the fame angle is something that he has in many ways found quite shocking and quite difficult to deal with, which says an awful lot about, to me, how stable he is, that he hasn't become this big shot in the island, Mr. Golden Boy.
It's a nice big one. Golden Wonder Boy.
He spends hours poring over the sackfuls of mail and desperately trying to answer them. So he takes it as a responsibility.
I think I'm going to keep them from now on, and each year I'm going to just reopen them, because I don't think this is going to happen again.
He's a very honest person, and he doesn't seem to be showing off, and he's just very good in front of camera as well, because what you see is what you get. There's no ponciness about him.
I've been eaten alive on my legs. It's nearly October as well, and they're still here. I can't tell you how itchy they are as well. I just want to... I could get sandpaper and just go and it would still itch. Oh my gosh, the trials of being a sound person out in the field, you see.
I would think it would be an awful shame if he came off and he was spoiled by the experience. I mean, my worst horror would be seeing Ben with a minder either side of him saying, "Excuse me, Mr. Fogel needs a glass of water," or "Mr. Fogel needs to go to the toilet," because he's not that type of guy now. He's managed to come through the whole year knowing that there's a lot of media attention on him, and he doesn't seem to have been spoiled by this at all in any shape or form that I can see.
Flower for the ladies. Oh, it's special flower. It has a special...
Although popular off the island, Ben was to play no part in the island romances. Tammy and Toby and Trevor and Trish were Taransay's hot dates, and getting hotter.
Tammy and Toby, a match made in heaven.
She's a great girl. Been spending time with her. Go on, speculate on that.
He's very supportive of her and very loving with her, and when she was off during Visitors Week, I know he was a bit lonely and he was a wee bit like a lost soul, and there he was standing like Heathcliff on the rocks, waiting for her to come back on the boat, and as she came off the boat, everybody gave them space. Tears to a glass eye doesn't come into it. It was so moving to see him with her. I'm a romantic. It has hopes. If I put my romantic hat on, and I have been looking at hats, then it has hopes. If I put my mother's hat on, I would say, well, they're young, they're in a unique experience. Certainly they have shared that experience, but it will be interesting to see when they come out into the real world, as we call it, whether or not the stresses and strains of that will divide them.
Oh, thanks, Trevor.
Well done, Roger. Well done.
Trevor, who was just, everybody was waiting for Trevor to get some sort of girlfriend somewhere along the line. And I think Trevor himself is beside himself with shock that he and Trisha have grown from being a very close friendship into something a bit more romantic.
Trish, cracking girl. She still won't marry me. Don't know why, but, I'm doing my best. Got another 7 months, I'll wear it down, don't worry. If her mum's watching, 7 months to go, Mum.
He's got a smile like an open piano on his face just now, and she looks very, very glamorous. So it's an interesting one. They've got a great deal in common. They have similar backgrounds. They've both worked hard. They've both seen quite a lot of adversity, quite a lot of trauma. And they strike me both as being very straightforward people. Both of them are quite happy to tell you exactly what they think and be very honest about it. So they have those characteristics in common. It's grown from a very healthy platform of common shared interests and similar backgrounds and an understanding maybe of what it's like to have not such an easy time.
Despite blossoming romances and less direct confrontation in the last few months, there were still underlying tensions by the end of the year.
When we got into the last 2 months of the project, clearly they only had another couple of months to go, so there was no real need to address issues of conflict. It was very, very ripe for sweeping it under the carpet, pretending things were okay, because at the end of the few weeks you didn't have to see these people again if you didn't want to.
Towards the end, the TV aspect of the project was causing divisions. There was resentment over the increased number of programmes. Some felt this affected both their fellow castaways and their island experience.
It seems to be the nature of man, I suppose, that we like to have a wee moan here now and have something to get our teeth into. And perhaps because they were shoving their own differences between them under the carpet, they displaced that. And they may have displaced that onto Lion Television and the BBC. Now, they would deny that hotly, and they would argue that they have a very good argument and very good grievances about changes in programming. But it is possible that this aggression that they had towards each other to some extent was transferred or displaced, and that instead of having an argument with Joe Bloggs and the Steading, they decided to get on the satellite phone and complain about programming or go in the huff about something.
So on reflection, was Castaway 2000 good, bad or ugly?
The positive aspects of this project have far outweighed the negative ones.
All the downs, all the lows, all the pants stuff that's gone on is easily outweighed by the good stuff.
Unquestionably, the highs have outweighed the lows, and I go away from the project with a great sense of success.
I think the story's only half over. To my mind, the proper story begins when they come home. I think there'll be the first flush of excitement, perhaps a bit of media attention, all the friends and family saying, what was Joe Bloggs really like? It's a wee bit further down the line when they start getting their feet under the table at home, when perhaps they have to get into the nitty-gritty of the telephone bill or getting to work or getting a job in the first place, that perhaps it will hit them what they've had, and maybe some of them will revise their lives in the light of this experience. I would love to keep in touch with all of them. I'd like to see new babies, marriages, you name it. I would hate to think I wouldn't see them again. For me, I wouldn't have missed it for the world.